we're ready to make the sheath. What I've got here is I got a piece of 8-ounce shoulder. Was a lot larger, but I've made a lot of knife sheaths out of this. And this is just one of my Patriot templates that I've already made up. So real quick, I can show you quickly how to do that. So what I would do is I lay the knife on the spine, then roll it on the crease. Then I can trace it out. Then this is just the belt loop, so that'll fold back like that. So got my pattern, got my piece of 8-ounce leather, and we kind of want to look to see where it's going to fold naturally, where the grain is, because we're going to have to fold it in half. And a lot of times this stuff can fold funny when you try to work with it. So kind of see where the natural curve is going to be. I think we're going to go on this side. It's wanting to move that way. So what we'll do now is I've just got a pencil and we'll trace this outline. Now this doesn't have to be super precise, where everything's going to get sanded down. So if you make a small mistake here, it's not going to be a huge deal. But I do need to get my template for the welt. I just keep a folder with all my templates. I believe that's for the Patriot. Yep, that'll work. So we can take this out of a, try to line it up out of a piece that'll minimize our scrap. You may be wondering what this small piece is for. I will show you when we start putting this all together. This style of sheath is called a taco sheath because it folds in half like a taco, just like you'd think. So we're done with that. Now, I put a new blade in this every time that I go to cut leather. It might be a little wasteful, but you'll thank yourself in the end. What I'm doing is I'm just roughing this out. So I can get this huge sheet out of here. You see how it's already starting to curve up on itself? So we'll use that for our advantage. Cutting board. The welt out of here. Like I said, if you're not using a sharp knife, this is going to fight you right here. I can already tell this knife blade's getting dull. Leather will dull them out pretty quick. Which is ironic. I use leather to strop knife blades to make them sharp. So there's the inside of our sheath. This is the Welt material. That'll get glued down. This will get folded over and stitched, and that'll be our sheath. And this is the first thing that goes down, gets stitched. So what we can start doing is kind of curving those corners off. Just make them look better. Kind of start massaging it into the position that it's going to be, help you out. Another thing we can do here. Mark. Take a straight edge here. Run a line down the center. This gives the leather somewhere to crease on. We're just removing a little bit of that material that's going to be in that fold. It's not so bulky. I really like to do this with heavier weight leathers. 8's about as thin as I'll go. I won't do it with anything that's like 6 ounce or 5 ounce, but 8 and up. I really take the time to do this on the crease. You see that folds a lot easier now. Still a little bit hard down there. Now what we'll do, kind of open that up a little bit. We'll take this leather skive just to smooth all that out. Just helps blend it in. So that folds over real nicely now. Our belt loop will come down like that. That's going to be the next part that we work on. Since this is going to get rolled over, we'll dress and burnish these edges now, because you won't be able to do it once it's glued and stitched. What this does, it knocks that corner off and gives it a nice rolled edge. We're going to take our ruler because we want this to be able to fit a 2-inch belt. We'll do 2-inch there. So our glue and stitching can start there. So what we'll do, fold this over where it'll be, fold that down so we get a good layout. Over 2. We're just referencing where that's going to get glued and stitched. Because this area here and here, we don't want to put dye in. The cement, the barge cement that I use, contact cement, it doesn't like to stick to stuff that has already been dyed. So we just kind of go all around that area, then we can contact cement that piece down, stitch it in, and it'll be fine. So the next thing, where's it at? Looking for it. Must be over here. I'm looking right at it. So this will just put a decorative bead detail in. Again, this isn't necessary. It's just something I like to do. It gives just a little bit of detail. If you wet down your leather when you're doing any embossing or stamping or any of this stuff, it takes a lot easier. Should be able to pick that up. We do. So like I said, we're just doing this all right now because we will not be able to do it once it gets glued down. Just a nice little touch that it adds. So now we are ready to burnish. And that is right there. And we're only going to worry about these edges here that are on the belt loop right now. Everything else will be able to get done afterwards. at the very end. Thought I still had enough liquid on there. And this doesn't take a lot of pressure. Basically, it's just the friction, the heat, that's going to burnish it, and it's going to give you a glossy finish and seal that end. You'll know once it's done. You'll hear it and you'll be able to feel it. This will slide right back and forth. It's dry down here, so this leather takes will take on a lot of moisture. The other thing you can use to help it along is gum tragacanth. Get that here. This will help burnish the ends as well. You just want to get it just on the edge. Do not get this on the face of your leather, because dye, you can't dye it. And I think for this knife, I think black. I think we're gonna dye it black. I don't think any other color is going to look as good. So actually, you know what? We're gonna glue on the welt first, so we can dye the inside too. So, got just barge cement. I'm not going to use that applicator. I should have some smaller ones around here. A little of this goes a long way. So we do both sides. We let it flash off, dry to the touch, and set them. And that's basically a permanent bond. The reason I'm not using this applicator, this is pretty much a brand new can of this, and it is so full that you pull this, I mean, that's hard to manage. Like I said, it doesn't take a lot of this stuff to do the job. We would have that cement everywhere, a giant mess for YouTube to see, which I'm sure you guys really want to see. We want to make sure we get all the way up here to the top. This is going to be our weakest point right up here. That's going to be where the knife's going in and out. That's where our stitching stops. So that's where we want to make sure we have really good glue up. All right, that brush is trash. They're just little acid brushes. You can find them at the hardware store. Something else to note, use that stuff in a well-ventilated area. Don't do it next to your furnace or hot water heater. It's very flammable. So this contact cement works under pressure the best. So if you can hit it with a mallet, you get that really squeezed down there, it's going to create a good permanent bond. So, and the other thing, we don't want to run this welt all the way up to where it creases over, because we want, if moisture and water gets into the sheath like this, we want it a place to drain out. We don't want it sitting inside of the sheath. So we can even take our skive again and just trim off just a little bit, so that when that folds over, you got a nice little spot for any moisture to go. And we can thin it out just a little bit. It's the small touches like that that are gonna show up in the end. So there you can see, once we glue it up, we'll have a nice little spot that moisture can run out. And we'll refine that by sanding it down a little bit. And these little fingerboards do a really good job of getting all those little kind of just scraggly ends of the leather. Yeah, that'll be nice. All right, now we are ready to dye. Dye will take, or the leather will take on the dye a lot better if it's damp. So just spray it down. You don't have to make it soaking wet. And I am using Phoebe's Pro Black. Wear gloves if you don't want this stuff all over your hands. It'll be a day or two before you get it off. A lot of people will only do down to the middle. I just do it all. I mean, you're already doing it, so why not? I didn't leave myself a spot at the top, but I will show you how to remedy that if you do like I just did and forget. It's not a huge deal. Hang that up so it's not getting dye all over everything. These bottles, I don't know if anybody else has this issue. They leak something fierce. Put that back out of there. Hence the reason for the gloves. So this stuff's pretty fast drying. You don't have to wait real long. Any wet spots I may have. All right. So I can vaguely see our marks still. About right there. So what you can do is take a scratch awl and just start roughing that area up. All different directions. Give the cement something to bite into. Do that here too. Take our cement again, same thing that we did. sure we still have a 2-inch belt loop, and we do. And most people aren't going to wear a 2-inch belt, but it's kind of the maximum belt. So now we'll take this dauber, and that we just have enough residual still on there that we can dress that edge. Once that dries, it's all seamless. It looks like there's dye all the way underneath it, which I guess there is on one side of it. So now what we'll do is we'll get the leather sewing machine out. We'll just do a little box sew in there, and that part will be done. Then we can fold it over, get it glued up, sew that edge. Then we'll sand all this, we'll dye it, we'll burnish it. Actually, before we go to the sewing machine, we should put our maker's mark into it. All right, so we have our maker's mark. Position it where we want. Didn't really set on there. There's our maker's mark put into it. In the future, I will get an arbor press to do that. It'll work much better. I could use my drill press, but I got it set up for doing some stuff, so we won't. We got a little bit of glue. Go around and move with that. Makes a really nice clean. So now we'll get you set up over at the sewing machine. You can do this by hand. That's how I started out. I did everything by hand, but sewing machine makes it go a lot faster. All right. I got the sewing machine all set up, and I will tell you, this is a very, very, very temperamental machine. When it works right, it works great. When it doesn't, it's a pain in the butt. That's just the nature of them, but it does save a lot of time when they work correctly. I'm going to get a light down here. So we can see what we're doing here. This is a hand crank machine. Your thread out there. Just do a little back stitch. I can't tell you how many hours I've had into just trying to get this machine to cooperate. Like I said, it's temperamental. There's forums on Facebook. There's forums all over the internet on getting these things to run right. just burning our ends there. So they don't come undone. You can also put a little bit of super glue on them. That'll keep them from backing out. Just heat them up, then press them down with the tip of the lighter. And there we go. So that part's sewn down. We'll touch it up with just a little bit of dye, since this is, I'd call it a natural thread color. So now we can go back over. I'm going to glue this up. I'll spare you that. You've seen it on this. You've seen it on that. It's going to be the same process. I'm going to rough up that side with the scratch awl. I'll rough up that side with the scratch awl. We'll put the glue on both sides, let it flash off. We'll glue it together, and we'll come back over here and we'll stitch a nice line in it. I'll put a small groove into it. So we're just going to run a couple stitches. Did our back stitch, locked it all in. Turn it. Take our lighter, cauterize those ends. Take this dauber that still has some dye on it. And there we go. That's how simple it can be to stitch that up. Like I said earlier, I've spent hours on this machine trying to get it to stitch. So you guys get to see it perform very well. I think I've got it pretty well dialed in now. A few kinks to it still, but we're working through them. But so now what we need to do, we need to trim the top of this welt off. We need to sand all this down smooth because it's all ragged. It's different heights and layers. So we'll get that all nice and smooth. We'll burnish this in. We'll dye it. Then we'll treat the leather. If there's any spots that we need to re-dye, we'll do it at that time. And speaking of that, the back side of the thread. You can buy black thread, but I mean, you can dye it just as easy. So there we go. We got our maker's mark in it. We got a belt loop in it. So we're just burnishing that end that we dyed. So there we have it. That is just a plain sheath. Now what we can do is we can treat the leather. But show you real quick. There's a couple things. You can water form these, but what I found is after I dye them and using this 8-ounce, I don't feel like I really need to, not with my Patriots anyways. I can form them pretty good by hand and they'll retain that shape, because I mean, we've got a really flat blade here, so there's not really any forming that needs to be done here. It's up here around the blade, and I mean, it's a good solid fit. And so we would just let that dry overnight and it would be done. But I'll show you what I use to treat them with. It's just some of this Obanoff's heavy duty leather protectant. And I just keep, this is just an old cotton towel, or it's actually a t-shirt in there. And this stuff is really good for your boots. If your wife's got a leather purse, anything leather. Anytime a customer brings in like an old hunting knife that the leather's all cracked and breaking away, I'll apply this, and I've got some Obanoff's leather oil, and that's really a really thin oil. This is, as you see, it's a paste, and that'll restore a knife or a sheath really nicely. But you want to make sure you get in all there, everywhere you put dye, because the dye will really dehydrate the leather, and if you don't take care of this stuff and put the minerals back into it, it'll dry out and crack. So if you keep up on this stuff, it'll stay nice for years. And just the heat from your hands really helps work it in. The same, I mean, like if you're working on your boots at home, take a hair dryer or heat gun to them and just warm them up. If they're sitting by the door or something, heat those up, apply this stuff, and that really helps it soak into the pores. And the last thing we'll do is we'll take a horsehair brush, just buff it out. Plus, it's Obanoff. It's really good for your hands. So if you got dry, cracked hands, you're working with leather, put this Obanoff on some leather. It'll help out your hands a lot too. So there we go. There's our sheath for our knife. I think it's a good pair. I think it looks really good. Last thing we'll do for the knife to finish it off before it goes off and gets etched, we will use some of this axe wax. It's another really good product that I've found. Mainly used for axes, that's why it's called what it is. But you put this on your blades, it'll protect it, it'll keep it from rusting. Again, if you apply this stuff to something that's warm, it really works better. Apply it to the handle. Just like that Obanoff's, I keep a little cotton remnant of a t-shirt in there. No sense in cutting up a new piece every time you use it. The more you use it, the more it gets soaked into, and the better it becomes. So we'll just kind of work that in. there we go. There's our knife, our Patriot knife. Green liners, black carbon fiber pins, stone wash finish. Still got a little bit of excess wax on there. You just want a real thin layer on it. And keep applying that stuff. You go out, you go hunting, you use your knife, and you clean it, apply another fresh layer of this axe wax on it, and you won't have any corrosion problems at all with your knife. So there we go. We've got a Patriot series knife with a custom leather sheath. There you guys go. So thanks for joining in on part 2 of this series. Hope you guys liked it. If anybody's interested in this knife, I will part ways with it. I will make a sheath of your choosing. If you want this sheath in a right-handed model, I will do that for you. If you want it just like this, just let me know down in the comments or through my email. Or if you want a Kydex sheath, I can do that too, and I can do whichever orientation you want. If you want to carry it scout style, I can do that, and I can do that as well for the leather sheath. And basically all I do for that is I just wrap another piece of leather, kind of like if you've seen my elk skinners on my website. Those are all scout carry, so I can do that for this as well. But I choose to carry it like this because it's a little bit bigger of a knife. So if you're interested in this knife, hit me up, let me know. If not, thank you guys for watching. If you would, hit that like button, subscribe for me so you don't miss anything, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks again, guys.